So a couple of days ago, I watched Pixar's brand new movie, Turning Red. It was interesting. This film is a coming-of-age story about a Chinese-Canadian girl living in Canada growing up. It's heavily inspired by the life of director Domi Shi, who also directed the 2018 short film Bao. Since this film was announced, I knew I was never the target demographic, but I still was curious to see what they were making. In the end, I found that Turning Red was a deeply personal story that was fun and engaging throughout. And now it's time for a quick rundown of the story. This story is about a young girl named Maylin Lee growing up in Toronto in the early 2000s. Oh yeah, also when she feels any strong emotion, she becomes a red panda. That may seem like a really simple story, but I admit there is more to it. But I'm not going to go into those here because this film zigzags in a bunch of weird and wacky directions and it needs to be fully seen to be appreciated. Speaking of which, yeah, this film is pretty weird. Even despite the panda stuff, there's a lot of weird and awkward moments in this film that it has been criticized for. But here's a bright idea. Maybe it's because it's about a teenager. As someone in that age group myself, I can confirm that a lot of the time we are cringy and awkward. I'd like to think it's ironic and intentional, but I know better than that. Another thing that this film has been criticized for is so-called mature topics. I will admit it was a little bit weird, but a lot of these things are kind of just part of growing up. I also feel like a lot of it is because people assume animation to be only for kids, which is completely untrue. Like, if this were a live-action movie, I could guarantee you would not see as many people complaining. But I feel like I've talked about this enough, so let's move on to some other topics. And by that I mean yet another thing that people are complaining about. People are saying this film isn't relatable enough because of its very specific premise. And yes, the premise is specific, but that's because it's directly from director Domi Shi, and that's what makes it one of Pixar's most personal movies. And I think that people will be able to relate to this movie because the concept of a coming-of-age story is something that everybody goes through. It doesn't matter whether or not you're Canadian, we all inevitably grow up, get old, and die. Finally, before I end the review, I just have two more miscellaneous things to say. Firstly, the film's art style. It's really anime-inspired, so things are exaggerated for comical effect, and it makes for a really fun viewing experience. And the music is also amazing. Not just the songs written for the boy band, but the score itself is just amazing. What's playing right now is the film's main theme, and as you can hear, it's kind of inspired by some pop music, but it also has some flutes in there. It's just really good. And that's all I have to say about Turning Red. Overall, I think I would give it a 7 3/4 out of 10. It's an incredibly personal story that's heightened by an incredible amount of creativity. Make sure to like and subscribe because the next movie we have to review is Morbius, which is bound to be a Best Picture nominee for sure.